Hello, and welcome to another Longmont Observer candidate interview. My name is Anthony Main. I'm a columnist and contributor here at the Longmont Observer. I'm here today with Schuyler Trowbridge, who is running for at-large seat on the Longmont City Council for the November 2020 election cycle. Schuyler,
2019.
2019?
2019.
Okay. My apologies.
No, it's okay.
Yeah. So this November. So thank you for being here with us and
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So let's start out with some of the basics. Where did you grow up?
So I grew up in rural Indiana, about 2 hours east of Chicago.
Okay.
So lots of farms, it's called the orthopedic capital of the world is where I'm from, Warsaw, Indiana. So lots of industrial and agriculture is where I'm from.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that near LaPorte?
No, it's kind of in between Gary and Fort Wayne.
Okay.
So it's kind of in the middle of a lot of different things.
Yeah.
Close to Michigan, close to Chicago. It's got a lot going on.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how long have you lived here in Colorado?
About 5 years.
Okay.
So it'll be 5 years next March.
Okay.
Yeah. So 4.5 years about.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you are running for office, the at-large city council seat. And how have your life experiences growing up in Indiana shaped who you are and how that makes you different compared to any other citizen running for office?
That's a really good question. So growing up where I did, it's very, very conservative. This is kind of like a liberal bastion that I hadn't really experienced before. I'm going to start in my teen years just to give you an idea of how my experiences really changed what got me here. I broke my spine when I was 17, and that caused a lot of turmoil and trauma in my life. And so I was looking down a path of opiate addiction and other addictions if I didn't turn my life around based on the circumstance that was given to me. I mean, things led to my fall that caused that accident, but if I didn't actively start changing my habits based on what the doctors were prescribing me, it would have been a quick downturn to jail or death. So I really started getting into activism and cannabis activism at a pretty young age because it saved my life. I wouldn't have been able to walk without it. So that really led me to the decision that I have to leave because I was getting arrested. I was going to jail. I've had multiple interactions with the police and cannabis from a young age, and it wasn't a good start. So I realized I had to go somewhere where I was going to be accepted. And I knew that Colorado had a very robust program for people like me regarding the economy and the doctors that could actually help me out. It was just a good choice. So I moved to Colorado and I got into the cannabis industry as soon as I turned 21. So I started in California. So I left Indiana at 19, moved to California. That didn't work because it's very expensive.
Yeah.
And so I came here, and at 21, I got into the cannabis industry, and it's just been kind of an uphill battle from there. I've dealt with discrimination in the cannabis industry. I've dealt with at-will terminations. I've dealt with scapegoating from investigations. So I think we need some major changes in the cannabis industry that we're facing. I think people who have experienced the kind of magic that can heal people with cannabis, I think that kind of needs to be brought forward. And I also think that we need to be destigmatizing it, and we could be making money on this. So if we bring in more lounges and if we bring in more cannabis tourism, it's going to decrease stigma and increase the amount of money. And I've seen a lot of issues from the cannabis industry, and the people in the marijuana enforcement division aren't listening to us. They aren't listening to the workers. They aren't listening to the owners. And I feel like it's time for us to be heard. So I've decided to step up and start being a voice for people who need to hear it.
I see. So let's talk a little bit more about that, the cannabis industry. As you probably know, it's taken Longmont a while to feel comfortable having dispensaries within the city limits, and they only recently, I believe it was last year, approved 4. And on your candidate website, you mentioned about lounge and hotel permits. So how do you see convincing the city council to expand the number of and types of permits?
So the types of permits that can come into town are pretty diverse. So restaurants can apply, because this bill passed yesterday, the lounge bill. So the John Singer, our representative, co-sponsored a bill saying we should be able to have lounges and tasting rooms. This passed yesterday officially, so now the cities can actually opt in. I have talked to a couple, and I'm not going to name any names, a couple people in the city council who aren't, or I guess just one. That's an overstatement. Just one person in city council who is very pro social consumption lounges. We're kind of like in this hidden corner caveat, because even in Denver, they're trying to introduce legislation where you can drink on certain streets. And we can't even have windows on dispensaries. This medicine saves lives. It decreases opiate addiction substantially. That's on CDPHE's website. When you have access to cannabis, there's decreased opiate usage. So I don't know where the cognitive dissonance would be and why we should keep hindering this, because it brings people together. It makes people more social. It ends stigma, and it's much safer than the alternatives. You can't die from cannabis. There's never been a case. So you can have restaurants sign up for just consuming. You can have tasting rooms where dispensaries can actually allow you to try a product before you actually after you buy it within the store. Or you can have kind of like a bar where you can sell and consume in the same space, but you can't take any home at all.
Right.
So there are a few different licenses. And for us to say no to that for another 5 years, just like we did with dispensaries, would be a huge, I mean, it's just saying no to money, basically. From Estes Park, there's 3 million people a year that go there, and there is an overflow of people. They're like, I can't go there every year because it's making me crazy. There's 3 million people that go there a year.
Right. So I don't know anything about the hotel occupancy rates here, but like what percentage of the people who stay in a hotel here are going to Estes Park?
Well, that's the thing, is they're not really going here. They're going straight to Estes Park, but it's because they don't know about Longmont. They don't know that Longmont's the next nearest town. I used to work at the Bud Depot at the base of the mountain, where going up to Estes Park, and I have people coming in from Estes Park and tourists are like, where do I smoke this? Where can I consume this? What do I do? Estes Park doesn't have dispensaries, and they probably never will. So why are we just sending them away into open spaces and into places where they're not supposed to be consuming, in their cars, where it's actually become a public safety concern? So it's not necessarily that people are coming here, but instead going to Estes Park because it's better or anything like that. It's just like, I think we could manage the overflow, and we can actually increase the amount of cannabis tourism if we advertise it, because there are people that go there. I've witnessed it. I've served these people.
Sure. And have you looked to see, researched like how much revenue this would be able to produce if there were lounge permits?
I haven't actually been, that's a hard thing to do, because when you allow lounge permits, it just brings in more business overall, because you can actually have events. Like if you've talked to, I think you guys did a piece on this. Maybe it was a Times call, but the pipe shops here in town have seen an increase in revenue because we allow dispensaries. So so it's increasing small businesses all over. So that mentality can be attributed to just freeing up the market even more and allowing more types of business licenses to come in. So the research for numbers, that's hard to do, but I've experienced it. I've been there. I've been in the industry for a very long time. I've been to the High Times Cannabis Cup and watched millions of dollars of revenue pour in to the entire communities that I've lived in. I've been to the Cannabis Cup here in Denver, and the same thing again. they don't make it necessarily safe, and I think we can make it safer.
Sure.
We can bring in a lot more revenue with this.
Okay. So let's move on to some other issues. It looks like from your candidate website that affordable housing is a major issue.
Huge
for you.
Absolutely.
So how do you respond to critics who contend that things like rent control actually makes the problem worse because it doesn't give developers an incentive to build?
Again, that's a good question. So I've talked to city council members, and the city councils, the way they feel about it is we need the option for rent control in the basket. No, they're not here to implement rent control right now, but say things do get out of hand and we don't have any land space to develop and people are just driving the prices up and up because the free market isn't allowing the prices to come in, we're gonna have to implement those tools. We don't need it right now, but so a lot of people say, if you make it public, it's going to become more expensive. And that's just not the final truth. People can spin economics any single way they can, but these things need checks and balances. Just like John Singer said, this housing is an infrastructure. It's not just a free market thing. People need housing. It comes down to public health, and we can't really solve homelessness, which is a problem in America, without a housing first approach. So unfortunately, we just need all the tools in the basket we can, because it's just one, that's just one small piece of the puzzle. And if we need to implement it right now, then so be it. The people need help right now. Any argument I've heard talks about 40, 50 years down the line. Okay, well, what about this generation? What about the people who are being squeezed out right now? What about the seniors who have lived here for their whole lives who can't stay here? That's for the people who we need the tools for. So I'm sorry if the developers don't like the concept of rent control, but they have to understand that there are checks and balances that need to be put into place for infrastructure housing. Okay.
So you mentioned John Singer. There was a number of bills that passed and have been signed or are about to be signed related to affordable housing. What's your perspective on those? Did they do enough? What else would you have liked to have seen?
I think they did a nice job of, so with the overall state legislature, rent control, the ban being lifted, that's a good thing. I support that. Julie Gonzalez has done a great job. I love seeing these freshman politicians coming in and just doing exactly what people want. I think we could do more though. And unfortunately, the way our system has been set up, most of affordable housing issues fall down on city council issues. It comes down to city zoning and planning. So they're federally, I think we should decrease the FHA loan rates substantially. That's an Obama regulation that has been wiped away by the Trump administration. On the statewide level, lifting the ban on rent control is an amazing start. Locally, we need to increase private to public partnerships. We need to stop allowing Section 8 vouchers to expire. There's a lot of things we need to be doing locally. So we've been given some tools, and it's very, very appreciative, but we still have so much more work to do.
Okay. On the environment, you mentioned in your environment section that you support lifting the ban on daisies growing, right?
Dandelions.
Dandelions,
yeah,
sorry,
so,
not daisies.
So yeah, they there's a small thing that says you can get ticketed for having dandelions grow in your front yard, basically.
Yeah.
Do you live here in Longmont?
Yeah.
Okay, so you are aware of this, probably.
No, I didn't know that was
I don't know how highly enforced it is, but it's a reason for people to just constantly spray glyphosate all over the lawns, which is a known carcinogen. There are just more and more lawsuits showing up regarding Roundup, giving people non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Yeah. So it kills bees, it gives people cancer. And it's banned in the entire EU. So we need to start making these progressive steps to actually catching up with the rest of civilization in the green movement. We're doing a lot. We are doing a lot here in Longmont, and it's cool to see, especially with the Longmont sustainability plan. But there's small stuff we need to do too. There are the small seams that need to be buttoned up and tightened up to just make major changes.
Are there alternatives to, like, non-toxic herbicides that could be used?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So I just so happened to talk to a few different landscapers in my career, because I've done landscaping, I've worked in the cannabis industry. But you can add things like, there are organic things you can add to your soil. And I think one was like corn husks or something weird like that. And it just raises the pH. So that way dandelions can't grow. Also, if you don't cut your grass constantly and you let it grow a couple inches, the shade stops dandelions from growing. Right. So there are small tools that can be shown to people to decrease that.
Right.
Also, this is a major breakthrough in environmentalism right now. If you spray grass with compost, it sucks up like 4 or 5 times the amount of CO2 in the atmosphere, which also decreases the amount of weeds being grown too, because you have more grass.
So spray with compost?
Yes, it sequesters CO2 out of the atmosphere. So like a foliar spray. So instead of Roundup, do compost, and you're just going to grow more grass. So there are plenty of alternatives to do. And it takes a while. It's not like an instant kill like Roundup, but these are long-term changes that benefit everyone for the long term. So
speaking of compost, one of the things you advocate is banning or not allowing restaurants or stores to throw out food and to either donate it or compost it.
Restaurants actually wouldn't be included in the have to give away the food, just because that's kind of hard. We want to give them the option. No, actually not the option. We want to give them compost bins.
Yeah.
They don't have to pay for them. So that would be a major incentive to just not throw away food. Like, why would you have to pay for something that's so good for the environment when we're pushing an environmental sustainability plan?
Right.
Banning food waste will be huge to environmental factors, because 40% of all food grown is wasted. So and again, this comes back to experience. I've worked for grocery stores even, and this is infuriating. I asked, why do we have to throw away this perfectly good food, even though it's just been expired for a day or two? I got an answer back about 3 weeks later from corporate. Bad business. It's just bad business to throw away perfectly good food, because then people will just want free food. And that sounds like victim blaming, actually. Because these people are not being fed, which is a public health concern, which also contributes to CO2 gases going into the atmosphere. So we're blaming people whose problem it's not. We need to be giving away valuable free food that would be going into landfills to people who need it. It's just something I really, really care deeply about.
So in your proposal, the city would provide compost bins?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
To grocery stores or restaurants or whatever?
Restaurants only. Grocery stores, it's going to be a little bit harder for grocery stores to just throw out food. I want to try to make it a little bit hard, because I've seen so much waste from grocery stores. They just throw it out. It's like a couple eggs are crushed in a carton and they just throw them all out. It's like, that's so wrong and bad business to give it away. It's infuriating. Especially when there were nights where I couldn't even hardly feed myself because of the wages they were giving me. It hurts. It's embarrassing.
Would there be health code issues with having grocery stores donate such large amounts?
And those can be worked around too.
Yeah.
There can be codes that can be waived that would otherwise be strictly enforced, because it just needs to start happening. Me personally, I don't know if anyone's ever shopped here, but there's a grocery store that sells specifically expired foods. I've been eating there for years. and I've never gotten sick.
Yeah.
Not once, ever. So I think there's just some dissonance between what's health code and ready to eat versus not feeding people.
Yeah.
You know, we can work around those codes. We'll figure it out in time.
So you claim, switching topics now,
No,
to sanctuary status and other kind of policy statements from the city council.
Yeah.
So you claim that on the website that on your website that when Longmont voted down sanctuary status, means that residents cannot call the Longmont Police Department in regards to anything. And I'm just wondering what evidence you have that calls have gone down because there isn't sanctuary status, or did I misunderstand that?
I think it was kind of misunderstood. So it's just for immigrants who are not of legal status.
Okay.
So if say they've been assaulted by a domestic partner or whatever, they're not of legal status. Their first thought, am I going to get deported for reporting this assault?
Mm-hmm.
That's a first response, because that's their own survival. I don't know how much sanctuary status would even do anymore, because after talking to some constituents, ICE is even in Boulder, and their sanctuary. I heard about a guy getting deported after a court case just a few days ago.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the reality that we have to live in. So I don't know how much sanctuary status would actually do, but I think keeping ICE out in any way we can, because of a quarter of our neighbors, a quarter of our friends here in Longmont are immigrants or are of Latino descent.
Mm-hmm.
So we just need to start protecting each other. And we kind of are close to sanctuary status after talking to someone on the city council, but it still scares me that ICE is still in town and they can just deport you after you get a speeding ticket or something like that, you know?
Right.
So I just think we just have to really be careful with that.
That's our coffee maker contributing to the conversation. So along those lines, are there any kind of other policy resolutions or statements that you would like to see the Longmont City Council pass?
Like I said, sanctuary status would be nice, but I would like help from people to give me answers on what we can do, because it was struck down in 2017. So if we could bring up this conversation on how to protect our Latino brothers and sisters, then I would be really happy if someone could help me with that, just because my ideas seem to be a little bit flushed out right now.
Yeah. So is there anything else you'd like to, let our readers or viewers know about your candidacy?
If you support me, if you like this interview and you like what you heard, please visit my website, trowbridgeforthefuture.com, like my Facebook, and I don't support the expansion of Pike Road.
Okay, there's a firm policy statement. Great. Well, thank you for your time today, and best of luck for you in November.
Thank you. Thanks for taking the time to have me today.
Yeah.